And we're streaming, so.
Okay, so this is being mixed from Skype through some other software you've got, and this is going to YouTube, or it's going to something?
YouTube and Periscope and I believe
Oh.
Facebook Live. So.
Okay. Yeah. So let's hope somebody speaks up and says whether we're being audible or not.
I'm sure. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. I'm gonna pull this up on my phone as far as Periscope, and I can kind of check that way as well.
Okay.
And see if there's sound. Hopefully. And Restream has decided to update its chat. So let me see. I have sound here.
Well, we hear you at least. Do you hear me?
Okay, hold on. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, technology is starting to work.
Yes, it is. It's starting to work, so that's great. So at least I know I have the chat on Periscope on my phone, so that's good. Melody has an echo. Yes, I do, because I was checking the sound. So, I'm waiting for people to pop on. So we got some people on Periscope. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm waiting for Restream to update its chat, so you'll be able to send me your questions and interact with us on there. So for this particular episode of the Science Hub, we have PZ Myers with us. And if you're watching, he's over here right next to me on our little screen, because it's awesome to have technology in this way. So
when it works.
When it works. We spent 20 minutes troubleshooting something, and it was just my headphones. So welcome to technology. How nice is that?
Yeah. It was great. It was all working fine for me. It was you that was getting weird.
I was the weirdo. But, I'm always the weirdo. So I'm going to start by saying, hello, my science lovers. This is the Science of PZ Myers. And so let's go ahead and get started. I just did my intro, and I think we talked through it a little bit, but that's all right. Because, it's a little bit kind of, I run this out of my nerd cave, is what I call my nerd cave. So I have all my little collectibles and here with science things. So yes, echo is really, really bad on my end. Yes, I know, because I had to test the sound to make sure you guys could hear me. So yes, nice nerd cave. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So with me on this particular special awesome episode is PZ Myers. And is it still an echo on y'all's end? Because it shouldn't be. So if you're not familiar with Mr. PZ Myers, he is an evolutionary biologist, and he also does developmental biology. And in addition to that, he also does talks all over the place on evolution. He also has a blog where he's known as, he's very proud about his atheism, so that's an aspect to him. He's a science educator, and he's just a really smart guy, and I've been privileged to get to talk to him a lot when I'm not going, I'm sorry, PZ, I've got technical difficulties again.
No, it's okay. I see in the chat they keep saying that the echo is coming and going, but all right.
Greetings, Oni. I'm trying to figure out where it is on mine, where there's the echo. I wonder it's
like I don't know. I don't know why. I don't have.
Well, I see they're saying, yeah, they're saying that PZ sounds good. So that's all that counts, right? That's all we need.
I'll just do this. Mute the live feed. I don't have a live feed outside of this. I only am just saying things, and I don't even hear myself in my headphones.
Huh.
Technical problems, the stream. Oh, goodness. All right. I think probably. Let me see. What about now? Did that fix it? Did that fix it at all?
You have a duplication of audio in OBS. Are you using OBS for this too?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Is it fixed now? Because I think. Switch the scene to just PZ. Okay. Yeah. I've got myself. There's me. There's him. Negative, huh? It's fixed now? What about
better now? Keep it like that? Okay, I guess.
Okay, fixed on which scene? Where it's PZ in the middle or the both of us together? See, there's a problem with the delay. Okay, everything's good now? Okay, all right. So, I will say things rarely. In case it comes back. When you switch to both, it goes back. Okay. Let me see. Hold on. Wait. Okay, I think I see where it is. What about now? I think I might have had multiple things going on. What about now?
Okay.
Either him or you. Both has echo. No, not good. LOL.
Come on, you're getting a bonus here. You're hearing us all twice.
It's fixed. Yay! I'm gonna have a sip of coffee out of my R2D2 mug for that.
Okay, and I'll work on my Coca-Cola.
Yes. Cheers, PZ.
Okay.
Finally, we have fixed things, and it only took almost 45 minutes.
Yeah. And we're caffeinated and ready to go.
Okay, so PZ, as we've said before, is I'm going to, wait, hold on. Oh, Organized Chaos is on. By the way, Organized Chaos does a lot of my artwork for the show in addition to my Patreon. So, hi.
Oh.
That's cool.
You have somebody doing your artwork. That's my problem. I have no art at all.
You have no artwork at all. Well,
no.
This is pretty cool. They could do like a cool picture of you or something. They do digital artwork. It's pretty cool. So let's talk about evolution, genetics, biology, all the kinds of fun stuff that we just love to talk about because it's fascinating.
Right. Okay.
So you started primarily, and I know we've talked at length at this, that you started primarily in zoology, and that transitioned to neuroscience.
Yes, I took a rather circuitous route to get here, but yeah, zoology is just very general, so that's just animal biology. And I quickly discovered that neuroscience is way too complicated. Nobody can understand neuroscience yet. It's not ready. So then you start focusing on cell biology and, actually what most neuroscientists do is, I see messages saying they can't hear me.
This would be my bane of
Okay.
Okay. Now it is back. All right. Well, I'm not
Okay.
touching anything anymore ever again. So, okay.
Yeah, keep your hands off of stuff, and I'll keep my
I'm
hands
sitting
off.
on my hands right now. So.
Okay. So anyway, what I was saying is, I've gone through a hierarchy of biology. So neuroscience was way too complicated, and the way we often reduce the complexity of neuroscience is you get a single cell work or small networks of cells. And there what you're really actually looking at more is more cell biology. And cell biology caught my attention. That was really cool stuff. And then in particular, another way we reduce the complexity is we look at developing systems. So if you're a neuroscientist and you're working on a big brain and you want to reduce it to something that's more manageable, one way to do that is to go to younger and younger systems so that you're looking at smaller and smaller networks. And that works out pretty well. So that's how I ended up doing zebrafish. I started off as a zebrafish neuroscientist, doing things like recording from axons and figuring out what potentials were there. And then we started going to zebrafish embryos, and it got much, much simpler, and it also changed the nature of the questions. And so I turned into a developmental biologist primarily.
That's pretty awesome. I have to say, I do think cell biology is incredibly fascinating, and it's interesting. You say that you went this long way around to get to neuroscience, but I imagine the zoology aspect gave you a bit more knowledge, especially when you're looking at brains and you're trying to use like an animal model. So that had to be pretty.
Yeah. I mean, and it's actually kind of an unusual background nowadays because you don't find very many zoology programs anymore. I got this at the University of Washington, where they actually had a department of zoology. I don't think they do anymore. But what's happened as molecular biology consumes everything, it's sort of said, well, we shouldn't be just focusing on animals. We should be focusing on all of life because all life is cellular. And so cell and molecular biology is a better foundation than saying, well, we're going to look at this one taxonomic group. And I kind of agree with that. It was a good approach to take. So even now, I'm at a liberal arts college where we have to teach a wide diversity of things. You can't just focus on one narrow little aspect. And it's actually been a little bit of a problem for me is I have to keep reminding myself that plants exist too.
Yes. Everybody forgets botany and plant science.
Yeah.
Plants. Oh, yeah.
Right. But, at the same time, the department I'm in is really strong on botany and ecology. And some of us who are more zoology focused are kind of weirdos in a sense. It's actually kind of uncomfortable too, because what you find is that most students who come to the college are, they're thinking in a very narrow way about biology and science, and they're thinking medicine, which means they always want to go pester the animal-focused folks in the discipline.
Yeah.
And they should be paying more attention to everything that, plants, fungi, protists. There's lots of organisms out there that deserve a lot more attention.
Yes, and it's interesting. I know when I used to teach biology, one of the things that we had to discuss was the importance of biodiversity, and so I would talk about the rainforest and how there's so many different species of different types of plants. One species may be poisonous, but the other one may be medicinal. And that's just a matter of changing just a few genes here and there, but that we need this particular, we do need diversity and we do need biodiversity, especially amongst the plants, because of the fact that we do see that. We see there are some that are poisonous, and a cousin of one might be medicinal. Well, a lot of cancer treatments we've seen have come out of the rainforest. of plants there. So.
Right. Yeah. So, for instance, our first year curriculum here at University of Minnesota Morris, there are two biology courses they're supposed to take, and one is called Fundamentals of Genetics, Evolution, and Development.
Yes.
Yeah, and that one you'd think the more traditional, pre-med sorts of students, they tend to favor that one. But we also require to take them this other course, which is called, what is it called? Since I don't teach it, I have to think. It's something like biodiversity. It's about evolution and biodiversity.
Yes.
And that, I think, is a pretty good foundation. If you understand genetics, if you understand evolution, if you understand development, and that one's kind of weird. Some people think that's irrelevant, but developmental biology is actually the heart of all of biology. And so if you understand those, and then you also understand ecology and evolution, mm-hmm. and you know something about biodiversity, you've got a good grounding, that you've got the breadth that you then need.
And then, I worked with a professor named Dr. McKenna, and I worked with him on the Tree of Life project while I was an undergrad, and he studied the diversity amongst beetles. And another thing that he was doing is trying to figure out how particular plants evolve and how they have an influence on the beetles that feed on them, and how the beetles that feed on them have influence on the plants. And so this coevolution going back and forth between the two. And oftentimes he would talk to me about how a lot of pesticide companies would contact him and ask for his input on a particular type of bug and what genes, because it was all genetics. I mean, he worked heavily in genetics to try to see how these particular beetles would fall on the phylogenetic tree. And so they would want to just target a particular species of bug, and so they had to know which particular gene that species had, to where they could just target based on that. So it was fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of insect biologists kind of resent the fact that their primary interaction with industry and the public is figuring out how to kill insects.
Yes. How do we kill bugs? And now we have the honeybee issue.
Yeah, and then also, just to relate it back to something we said earlier, is a lot of the ways that you kill insects involve neurotoxins. So, yeah, things that we consider absolutely hideous applied to people, but we think, oh, this is really cool. We can apply this nerve gas and poison all the insects without affecting people.
It's fascinating how that works. Like, wow, this could kill, all these things. And it was like, yeah, no, it doesn't do anything to people. So.
Yeah, subtle differences in the nervous system. All that stuff matters.
Yes, it does. Then it could be traced to genetics and see which particular genes are being expressed or not. It's all like an interworking puzzle where all of these pieces come together, and you're like, well, this piece is just a little bit different than this piece here, but it's just neat. I could talk all day about that.
Oh, yeah, I taught a whole course on just that last year. So I taught a course called Ecological Developmental Biology, which is focusing entirely on the interactions that go on between genes and organisms and environment, and really makes this useful point that, well, let me step back a minute. One of the things that has happened in biology over the last 50 years, 100 years, is this increasing focus on just genetics and molecular biology. It's gotten kind of ridiculous right now that you can basically get just a degree in simply molecular biology at some places, and that's considered biology. But it's not sufficient, that you have to look at the whole range of things that go on in an organism. The genes actually don't do anything all by themselves.
Right.
Genes have to interact with proteins and with the cellular history, with epigenetic marks, and then they have to interact with the environment via those mechanisms. So you get a very one-sided view of biology if you focus on just molecular biology.
Yes, I have to kind of agree with that. It's good to understand the molecular biology aspect of things, but how that kind of grows from that. I mean, you know, it's like when I look at people who are like, I'm a quantum physicist, and yeah, I understand you understand these tiny little particles, but you know what goes on after that, after they come together, and
right.
So it's kind of like, yeah, it's good to understand quantum, but we got to kind of look at also how they interact together and make these other things too. That's kind of important as well. I can't imagine a person that had a quantum physics degree could go out and get like a functional type of stuff. But do you have any like experience in column chromatography? What is that? You know, anion exchange, any of that just flies right over your head.
Yeah, I mean there are obviously really specialized jobs in industry and science, but yeah, there's nothing like the equivalent of a garage where you can go and do quantum mechanics, right?
But, you know, I kind of feel it's the same way with molecular biology. Now, yeah, it's a bit more functional than quantum, but if you don't have like a practical application outside of just the theories of stuff, then how are you going to get a functional position outside of like, you know, in academia, which is really hard nowadays to kind of get a steady, solid job in. I mean, there's a lot of people that are kind of leaving academia because of the fact that it's you know, there's less funding, it's highly competitive, and it's very difficult to get a substantial career in academia.
Yeah, but you know, just to disagree a little bit, you know, when you look at industry, excuse me, when you look at industry, what you find is that they do need people who understand quantum physics, but it's all tied to much more applied sorts of processes. So, for instance, if you're going to be a material engineer, or if you're going to design batteries, for instance, you better know quantum physics. You can't design a modern battery without understanding some of these concepts. And I think it's actually the same thing I was talking about, where you can specialize in these narrow things, but where they become applicable is when you take a whole broad range of knowledge and can integrate them in a useful way. So physicists need to know all these things, but I would also say that biologists, if you're going to be a good biologist, you need to know everything.
Yes. It's pretty interesting, because when I was working on my second master's, in chemistry, we were taking this class and they were talking about electrochemistry, and a friend of mine at the time was trying to become an organic chemist, and he's sitting there and he goes, when would I ever need this electrochemistry? I'm like, this is how batteries are made. You have to have electrochemistry. You're stuck in a jungle or for whatever reason. You need power. You know? This highly unlikely situation where you would need to actually make an acid-base type of battery kind of situation. But still, you know, electrochemistry is actually pretty important in a lot of industrial aspects. And then he just looks at me and he goes, oh, batteries.
Well, it's more than that. You know, the other place you really need a lot of electrochemistry is in cell metabolism and neuroscience.
Yes, you know, the potassium pump, the study of the potassium pump, and then you got the calcium channels, all of that. God, that's
right.
Stuff.
Oh yeah, no. When I teach neuroscience, it actually surprises the students, because the first thing I lead them through is a whole bunch of basic electrochemistry. That you have to understand how ions flow. You have to understand things like dot and equilibrium, stuff that you might teach in a physical chemistry or an electrochemistry course, but it turns out they're completely fundamental to understanding how a neuron works.
Yes, absolutely. And I find that a lot of the times when I encounter people who don't quite understand, you know, and first of all, the brain is just fascinating anyway, and we know a lot about it, but we still don't know a lot about it. My understanding of it is, I mean, but when you encounter somebody who is hearing about how neurons actually work for the first time, it just blows their mind. They just don't realize the intricate reactions that occur across the synapses and things like that. It's just fascinating. Like, this is where feelings happen. This is where we have our moral compass to some degree. This is where, we strengthen these lines. So in these thought pathways, this is how, so for me, when I'm talking to people and they're trying to, I don't know, when I encounter a person that's kind of bigoted about science and stuff like that, well, these are my feelings and this and this. And like, well, do you know where feelings come from? This is where they come from. And they just take it so personally that, it's just these basic reactions, and they think that somehow makes it lesser.
Right.
And it
yes.
does.
Yeah. And again, getting back to neuroscience, you discover that it's far more complicated than you thought. So when I went to graduate school and started working on zebrafish neurobiology, I had all the basics. That you've got axons, and they make synapses, and they secrete neurochemicals and all that kind of stuff. And then the first thing we were looking at in zebrafish was a system that didn't use any of that at all. That there's a portion of the zebrafish nervous system that uses field effects to generate electrical potentials.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you go to graduate school, and the first thing they do is blow your mind by telling you that here's this completely different phenomenon that has nothing to do with what you studied. So in zebrafish, there's this big cell called the Mauthner cell, which is responsible for startle escape responses.
Yeah.
It's in the brain. It receives inputs from every sensory modality, and it sends big signals back to the spinal cord that triggers the fish to do this fast startle response. And what you discover is that there's a structure called the axon cap. And all these inputs come in, and they make these squirrely, squiggly, tangled connections. And actually, they're not connections. They just go in there, and they bend around, but they don't make synapses.
Right, right.
Yeah, so what happens is that it integrates potentials from all these different neurons that come in, don't secrete chemicals, don't make direct junctional connections, but it just generates field effects that modulate the response of the neuron, and that was kind of mind blowing. But it just you also need to know some electrical engineering if you're going to go into neuroscience.
So I don't know if you can see the Periscope chat. That's a separate chat going on. You might just be on the YouTube end.
Yeah.
There are some people that are talking back and forth. Now on YouTube, somebody was mentioning about retroviruses that seemingly have been domesticated to communicate between areas of our brains, and that they're called GAG viruses. Are you familiar with that at all? Because that's a new thing that I'm not familiar with.
You mean like glycosaminoglycan? I don't get that.
I'm not certain about that either. And then on Periscope, Atheist Engineer is saying field effect sounds like semiconductor physics. So he works in, I believe he works in geolocation. He's a physicist. So
yeah. No, really, all these disciplines have much to teach each other.
Yes.
We should be talking more often with people outside of our narrow little specialties.
I agree. I've been learning a lot after having left academia and gone into industry. There's people with diverse backgrounds kind of working together in that regard. I've encountered a lot more diversity just in my little company that I've been working at in regards to where people have come from and what they're bringing to the table. So hello to everyone on Periscope as well as YouTube. If you want to throw stuff at us to talk about, I know PZ can't see the Periscope chat, but I can, and so you can do that. And I can also pull up Twitter on my phone. So if you're not able to interact there, just use Hey Scientist Mel hashtag, and I can ask him questions in that regard from there. So this is cool now that we've sorted out all the horrible sound issues.
Yeah, let's see how many communication modalities we can throw in all at once.
Yes, let's overload overload the internet and technology. I've been told that when I break things on the technological aspect, I break them gloriously. When you really break it, you really break it. I'm like, yes.
We just need more. We need to get a Usenet connection going here, and maybe something through Gopher.
That would be cool. That would be cool. So I'm checking Twitter. Nothing update there. All right. The different fields seem to talk more than they used to decades ago. I think so. I think that's true. Fire up a dial-up modem in AOL.
No, that's going too far.
Do we dare go back that far? Lord, no.
Yeah.
So you're often on Twitter talking with creationists.
Or anybody who wants to yell at me. That happens a lot. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So do you often get trolls? Do you often get yelled at on Twitter?
Why, constantly.
Constantly?
Yeah.
What do they say to you? What is the most common thing that you hear?
Oh, what is the most?
Like the top five things that you hear to the point you want to put your head through a wall.
Let's see. It would be things that are totally irrelevant to this conversation, like I get shouted at for being an SJW and a cuck, and what other bogus sorts of nonsense the far right is peddling right now. But I'm pretty strongly on the left, and so that means the right wing likes to hate on me. Oh yeah, and feminist. Feminist is used as a dirty word on many sides of the internet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I try to keep my account pretty much on the science end of things, and so once people start, they're like, "Well, you're just a puppet for this," and I'm like, "I'm just trying to tell you about science. You can either listen or not."
Yep. Yeah.
Which one do you want to do? But I do have to say, it did bother me recently with Donald Trump talking about just showing a vast ignorance about climate change recently. And so we need some of that global warming. I'm like, oh, I just got my coffee and it's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, but this is really the dilemma. I mean, my blog started out as purely a science channel, and it stayed that way for some time. But the thing is, you can't just talk about science anymore. Not in a country or a world where you've got so many people who are using bigotry and prejudice and racism and sexism to attack the discipline, and yet when you start going after that stuff, it can consume all of your output pretty quickly.
I agree. It does too. And I also use my account and my communication account to kind of call out pseudoscience. And also, my Twitter was quoted in the Washington Post recently.
Oh, very good.
Yes, they know I exist now. The Washington Post knows there's a girl named Scientist Mel who does things sometimes.
Right.
And it was about Goop and the Gwyneth Paltrow nonsense.
Oh.
So yeah, that was this past week. I think Monday morning, I woke up to find out I was quoted by the Washington Post. For
very good.
Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't like. You realize science thinks all of this is ridiculous, and I know that you're trying to profit off of nonsense. And it's designer nonsense. That's what it is. And so it's hard for me to be quiet about how people will say, and the person that they have, that's the medical doctor, he's never been published. And he said that he did a study this one time with people with autoimmune disease, and he changed their diet and they got better. He hasn't released a paper. He hasn't released a study. He hasn't released any of it. He presented the paper at the Pasteur Institute at a conference, that you have to be a member of in order to see, in order to go, and then you have access to the paper for 6 months after the conference, but only if you're a member. And and it was like 6 or 7 people he did the study. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And so I was like, can I please see this paper? Can I please see this paper you're talking about? Because they had a whole blog post about just eating better will maybe get rid of your autoimmune system symptoms. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And that just put me through the roof. But then I'm like, okay, yeah, I am going to write an open letter to Miss Paltrow and say, come on my show and let's talk science.
She won't.
She won't do it. No, she won't. But the fact remains is that he will, and I was looking at it, I'm like, all right, there are people, I'm hoping that nobody will see this as any kind of medical advice, but of course they always have the disclaimer that's so tiny at the bottom of their blog post, and you have to scroll 10 times through in order to get to the bottom. Nobody ever does. But my thought on that is the people in their target market is upper middle class women. And so these women who are buying into this have access to medical care. So even if goop is harmful to a degree, they kind of are, these women are going to have access to ample medical care, so it doesn't really matter in their heads. You know what I mean?
Right.
They feel like they're doing something extra special just for themselves, to make it super uber nice, as opposed to those plebs that can't afford coffee enema. Don't put coffee in your butt, people. Please don't do that.
So this is a good thing about being poor, is that I can't afford a coffee enema. So I don't have to worry about it. It's okay. It's good.
Yes. You don't have to worry about a coffee enema. Okay, so somebody said when I was in college, Twitter didn't exist. I have no idea what my professor's beliefs were. Peasy is somewhat well known. Can you talk about how social media profiles affect professor-student dynamic? That's a pretty good question.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, I actually have to take time out of my class at the beginning of the semester to tell them, no, don't worry about it, because all my students. Okay, first of all, let me step back. My students are not told by me or anyone in any official position that they should read my blog. So that's off the table. But many of them do anyway, and there's a little bit of notoriety, and they read it and they discover, oh my gosh, he's a liberal atheist. Yeah, and some people get very irate about that. So this past semester I was reported by a student to the chancellor of my university that I would not allow students to pass if they were religious.
Oh wow.
Oh wow. That's a flat out lie, because for one thing, I don't ask them what their religion is, and it's not on any of the official forms. So no, I can't flunk them even if I wanted to. But yeah, so I got this, and I had to explain to my division head that no, this is not true. That I don't ask religious questions on any. That would be a really interesting thing to do in a biology class, wouldn't it? Do you believe in God, and which God do you believe in? And I'm going to give you 10 or 20 points, depending whether you get the right answer. No, that never happens.
Oh my God.
So yeah, there's some misperceptions, and sometimes people come in with weird ideas about it. But I think I straighten them out pretty quickly, because when they go to my class, they just get hardcore biology.
Yeah.
None of that other stuff.
And it's funny. And thank you, Steve, for the shout out to get more people come. And, if you're not able to watch the live stream, it'll still be on Periscope. It'll still be on YouTube. And you can watch it anytime you want. Always ask us questions. Even if you're not asking us live, you can still hit us up on Twitter and ask us questions there. And so, yes, I think it's interesting. And I only really see that kind of complaint from people who are religious. You don't really see an atheist go, I think you're going to fail me because you know I'm an atheist. I don't think I've ever heard that argument come out of anybody's mouth who is non-religious. I have a religious teacher who failed me because I'm an atheist. I'm like, most atheists don't walk up to their teachers and go, I'm an atheist. You know that? You better pass me or I'm going to sue the school. I've never heard that come out of a non-believer's mouth. I've only heard it come from highly religious individuals that,
Yeah. And it also goes for interactions with your colleagues. I mean, I know some of the professors at the university go to church.
Yeah.
And they know I'm kind of loud about atheism.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't affect us at all. That, as long as they're not bringing religion into the administration, I'm fine.
Yes.
I might start complaining if we start opening committee meetings with prayers, but they don't do that. They never do that. So it's really not a problem.
Yeah, I find that the university atmosphere in regards to the religious aspect of things, because everybody understands and has had a well-rounded education that different strokes for different folks, it's just best to keep it to work.
Yeah.
Just going to keep it to work. That just makes life a lot easier and helps to make things run smoothly.
And because we don't use religion as a criterion in hiring,
yes,
the faculty are very diverse. They have all kinds of opinions about the stuff that they're not doing in the classroom. I mean, you wouldn't hire a biology student that didn't believe in evolution.
Yeah.
But you still get Catholics and Protestants and Muslims and atheists in the discipline. So you can't do that thing where you say, well, there's one true religion, so we ought to open with a prayer to that one true God, because everyone will protest. And I wish that were the case for other functions in the United States.
Yes.
If we appreciated all the diversity that's out there, so that, for instance, City Hall meetings didn't open with a prayer because they would recognize that there are people in their community who don't believe in their particular God.
Right. It's and I think that it shows a vast level of ignorance, in my opinion, if somebody were to say, we're gonna open prayer for just this one God. And I think it's also extremely and exceedingly impolite. Not only is it just ignorant, but it's also impolite, and it's just, why would you do that? I don't get that at all. You're showing that you do not have an understanding that other cultures exist and they think differently than you,
Mm-hmm.
or, and so to me, I've just always found that it's been just, it's just extremely distasteful. Not because I hate religions or anything, but just because it shows it's bad manners. It's just bad manners to me.
Well, it also reflects a kind of authoritarian impulse, because the problem isn't prayer. If somebody's opening a city council meeting and they want to have a little private prayer before they get started, sure, that's not a problem. The problem is when they decide, well, I think everyone else ought to pray with me.
Yes.
That's where the situation breaks down, because now you're trying to impose your beliefs on others.
Right.
And
see, although I don't mind a moment of silence thing.
Yeah.
A moment of silence thing can be very unifying for your group, and you can be like, okay, I just want to take a moment instead of, I want to pray for the people that died in the fire last night over here. You can just say, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that, we lost some people last night. So let's just take a moment to think on that. Yeah. That's different. And if somebody wants to have a moment of silence for that, you're acknowledging something. You're coming together as a group, as a unifying thing. That's usually the best route to go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I see in the comments that somebody says few would be okay with sacrificing a chicken before a city council meeting, and that's sort of true, but it's not entirely true. You don't want to sacrifice a chicken in the council meeting hall because there'd be blood all over it. It would be messy. It would have to be cleaned up. But seriously, if somebody wants to go and sacrifice a chicken before they show up at the meeting, I can't say anything about that. I would also point out that many of them probably went out to dinner and consumed a chicken,
Yes.
which is kind of the same thing. So, oh yeah,
Yeah.
a bucket of KFC. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you go out and get a bucket of KFC, that's a sacrifice to Colonel Sanders.
Yeah. Are you gonna be like, I'm eating this bucket of KFC in memoriam of, whatever.
Yeah.
This is a special dinner. We are sacrificing this cow.
Right. And if they brought in a bucket of KFC and they actually ate it there while we're holding the meetings, that wouldn't bother me either. It would just bother me if they started passing around and said, "You better eat some of this."
Oh my God.
Because I'm vegetarian, so no, I'm not going to do that.
Don't shove your chicken down my throat.
That's right. No chickens, no gods go down this throat.
Oh, goodness. Yes. So I think it's interesting. I work with a company, and it's in about once a month. They always they cater out lunch and stuff, and so they're wanting to. Somebody mentioned Chick-fil-A because some of them go to Chick-fil-A. I currently boycott Chick-fil-A because of their perspective on cis hetero people. So I currently boycott Chick-fil-A, but it kind of puts me in the position. I'm like, well, I don't have to eat their lunch, and so nobody's asked me, what do you think about Chick-fil-A? And I'm just like, I'm not going to say anything. But,
I'm sort of boycotting it, but I've never been to Chick-fil-A, so it's kind of an ineffectual boycott to not do what you never did before anyway. But yes, that's another case where I disagree, and it's the authoritarian impulse to say, not only will you eat my chicken, not only will you pray to my God, but you will have sex in the way I prefer you to have sex. You don't get to tell me that. Sorry.
You're not in my room, regulating what I'm going to do with my body this evening. Are you going to tell me how to shower as well?
I might tell you should shower every once in a while, but
yes.
Only if you're going to go out in public. Okay, you should shower.
You probably should shower. Hygiene, cleanliness, just be around other people. I actually used to work at Chick-fil-A when I was in high school. And the thing is, at the time, it's a minimum wage job. And at the time, the current laws were if you worked 8 hours, you had to have like a 30-minute break. But if you work like 9 hours, you got like 2 30-minute breaks. They would work me 8.5. And then the 30-minute break I got, they would feed you. And so you had Chick-fil-A every single day working at Chick-fil-A. And they're like, here's your free meal. And I'm just like, I didn't eat Chick-fil-A for probably 7 years. After that, I'm like, I don't care. And you learn about humanity working in a food service job. You learn a lot about humanity and not always good stuff.
Yeah. Yes, but did you learn anything about chicken anatomy?
No, I didn't. Everything came. We got our nuggets. They just, they were. We had to bread the nuggets there, and so they were like actual breast pieces. They weren't like mashed up McDonald's nuggets. They were cut up breast pieces. So you could. It is legit chicken. It just comes, already cut. You just bread it there, or you grill it, or something like that. So, yeah.
Oh, too bad. Oh well.
Yeah. Chick-fil-A isn't telling you how to do anything. And yeah, I don't support their ideas either. And I just don't eat there. Once I found out what it was that they contribute to what they consider charities, I stopped eating there altogether. I liked their grilled chicken, but it took me like 7 to 10 years before I ate there ever again because I worked there.
Yeah. Okay.
We've gone way off the track.
That's right, but it's all good. We're just decided we're boycotting everything.
I boycott Hobby Lobby. I boycott Chick-fil-A. I have a list. Ada blocked me on Twitter. They didn't like it when I asked them what their kill numbers were.
Oh, well, it's easy to boycott PETA, though. I mentioned I'm vegetarian and I kind of avoid all meat consumption, but the things that PETA does are so dishonest and so disgraceful that you just can't support them.
I can't.
Yeah.
When you look at their budget and how much they spend on advertising versus how much they spend on outreach programs and food for the animals they supposedly rescue, it's disgusting.
Right. Yeah, and I can sort of sympathize with the goal that we should be eating less meat, but I think the way to do it is you can take a positive approach, and instead of punishing people for eating something that's pretty familiar to all of us,
right,
is start promoting better food that doesn't require as much animal products.
Yes. Somebody on Periscope asked, what's the focus of our topic? I'm like, pretty much whatever comes out, and if anybody is jumping up and saying, hey, can you talk about this? And we're like, yes, we will talk about those things. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So
we said earlier that biology and science in general is you got to know everything. So everything is fair game if you're talking about science. Yes,
it is. And so that's the focus of our topic. Whatever you want to talk about, it's just we're just carrying on and going off the rails sometimes. There. So life, the universe, and everything. Yeah, pretty much. You like chocolate. Chocolate is good. I'm actually writing an article right now on in regards to malnourishment and poverty and obesity. And so I know that was kind of like the former First Lady's platform was childhood obesity and things like that. And where I live, one of the zip codes we have out here, it's so impoverished that their infant mortality rate rivals that of a third world country. And a lot of people don't realize, I live in a city where we have advancement of cancer research for children. We have medical centers that are research medical centers on the forefront of medical science. And there's just no access to this for a lot of people in the city. And so I'm currently working on an article about why it is that people in impoverished areas tend to be overweight and suffer diseases associated with malnutrition and obesity and things like that. And it's because they don't have access to good food. They just don't. And it's cheaper to eat junk. And as you mentioned, it's better overall to eat less meat. But when a bag of chicken nuggets is like $2 or $3 and you're on a food stamp program, you're going to go with what you can afford.
Yeah, and it's the industrialization of food is a big problem. That what we've done is we've taken complex foods that are good for you, and we've prioritized reducing them to easily shippable, easily produced, and easily stored materials like lots of high fructose corn syrup. Because high fructose corn syrup is really easy to store and transport, but it's it's not. The thing is, it's not bad for you, except if that's all you get.
Yeah, I mean, if all you're getting is the simple sugars, minimal nutrients, high fat and high salt, just it's not a good diet for you. And a lot of these people, one thing I plan to do is kind of go through. Gwyneth Paltrow did this. She was like, I went and took, and this is how much I bought on food stamps for this amount of money, and I'm sitting there going, nobody on food stamps is going to buy super fresh fruit vegetables because they're going to go bad in a few days and it's expensive. Nobody's going to buy all of this stuff that she thinks that poor people buy for food.
Right.
They're going to buy extremely processed stuff. What is your opinion on non-hydrogenated vegetable oil? What do you think, PZ?
My opinion of non-hydrogenated, what?
Non-hydrogenated vegetable oil.
Polyunsaturated vegetable, well, sure, I use it. I mean, what kind of...
Oh, goodness. I bought sugar yesterday. I noticed on the bag it says natural. Natural sugar. And there's something called raw water. I haven't looked into that yet.
Oh, I looked into it. It's terrible.
Okay, so tell me about raw water because I've not read it. And people are like, you need to check out raw water. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm scared.
Yeah, it turns out it's kind of a scam in that it turns out that most of the companies that are selling it are just selling tap water. But the whole idea is, it's that natural thing. You're supposed to drink water that's natural, which means instead of running it through pipes and putting in fluoride and sterilizing it and chlorinating it, what you should do is just take it straight from the spring and drink it. And it's so delicious and it's so good for you because it's got all these living things in it. So it's living water, living things like amoeba and giardia.
Yeah, cholera, messed up bacteria, and bear poo.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's good for you. It's natural.
Fish turds.
That's right. Drink more fish turds. They're good for you.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, it's just like, it's funny because I think that falls along the same lines as we don't want chemicals in our food, and they don't realize your food is chemicals by the very definition of chemicals. And what you mean is toxic chemicals. That's the word you want. You don't want toxic chemicals in your food. So when they're saying, this water is extra natural and fresh is not necessarily helpful. I mean, you do have to sanitize your water when you go camping. I mean, they have tablets for that. You can boil it. There are reasons for that.
Yeah, this whole business of nutrition is one of those things that's really ripe for the pseudoscience that we were talking about earlier. This is why Gwyneth Paltrow can get into it, is because people eat lots of food and they care about their food.
Yes.
And there might be a little bit of a reaction going on to the fact that there's so much sameness in our foods that every town has a McDonald's, and McDonald's food is really predictable and it's got this boring sameness to it, which maybe some people want. Maybe they want that boring sameness, but a lot of people want something different. And unfortunately, rather than going for things like local fresh produce and trying different spices and getting some variety in their diet, they're instead going to Gwyneth Paltrow, who tells them, you need bee pollen and you need cordyceps fungus and you need this.
You need to start coffee in your butt and 8 eggs in your lady bits and maybe do a rain dance outside and suck on a crystal.
It's magical thinking that replaces, sensible thinking that would counter some of the simplifications that have gone on in nutrition over the past few decades.
Yeah, I do think there's something marketable about having something new and different. This is new science that's just come out. It's stuff that's ancient Chinese medicine, and the Egyptians did it one time, and you're like, that doesn't mean it's correct. People used to think that, well, they still think the earth is flat, but, they thought that was a thing. They also thought the earth was the center of the universe. There's still people who think that too, but we have moved from that. Just because they did it in the past doesn't always mean that it's okay and safe.
Right. Yeah.
But it makes it somehow like this ancient knowledge that humanity has held and we've carried with us, and we've just forgotten it, and we're bringing it back, and here it is in a brand new special package that's $237 now normally, but for you it's just $163.
Yeah.
So
yes.
It's ancient knowledge on sale.
And so often what passes for ancient knowledge was ancient compromises that they found useful to get by. So, for example, I come from a Scandinavian tradition, and I've had lutefisk, and I kind of like lutefisk actually. But when you look at what lutefisk is, what it is here are these people living on the seacoast who need to preserve fish for the long winter, and so they do these radical things, like exposing it to, it's all, soaking it in lye, for instance, and drying it. It's all to keep the bacteria away. It wasn't done because somebody said, oh, this would be so delicious if we just added a little lye to it.
I like a little bit of lye in my food. It's all right. Just sprinkle it here and there. I guess
sure.
Lye in my diet,
And you could say it's really effective in killing bacteria. So maybe they were smart about, but yeah, they were smart about food preservation. It wasn't necessarily smart about, best nutritional value or anything like that. There's always compromises that we have to carry out. And the mistake is when you try to assign a different purpose to those compromises.
Right, and I actually took a course, it's called The Religions of Abraham, and they talked a lot about the dietary restrictions in the Jewish religion. I mean, they lived in the desert. Shrimp doesn't do so well in exceedingly hot types of atmosphere. It goes bad, and then you eat it, you get violently ill, and back in those days, violently ill, where it's in food poisoning, could have been lethal. So there's certain foods you couldn't eat because it was not conducive for the environment that you lived in, and so that kind of transitioned it into this, we're not supposed to eat this food because it kills us. That must mean it's, God doesn't want us to eat this.
Right.
Well, if God's a nice person, then God would not want you to eat that if it was going to kill you in this horrible environment where it turns and all the bacteria grows in it. But it's kind of like a lot of that stems from that ancient need to survive, and you just learn that these purple berries kill you and these red berries don't.
Yeah, but I suspect it was even more fundamental than that. If you're living out in the desert, you do not catch shrimp. You do not have shrimp to eat.
You certainly have to go and carry it with you from another country.
Right, but even if it does go bad, you're not going to know it because you simply do not have it in your toolkit, so you don't recognize it. But then maybe you go visit a town on the seacoast, and you discover these people are eating strange bugs, and what you've got instead is kind of a revulsion at this weird food that you have never seen before. It's nothing about its quality, just, boy, these people are eating bugs they netted out of the sea. That's disgusting. And you go back and tell your friends, boy, you don't want to live like those people in town. They have to eat bugs.
Yeah, their bugs are probably like, scorpions and stuff.
Right. And then it evolves into a taboo, and then afterwards we make these justifications. Well, it would go bad out here, so we shouldn't eat it here. When it's really just squeamishness at novel foods.
It's funny. People are just amazing creatures, across the board, and our ability to use what we have and learn what's helpful and what's not, and then we go, and after we've made these strides in technology, people go back and go, this ancient knowledge, and I'm like, the only ancient knowledge I'm ever upset about is when the libraries of Alexandria were burned. That's the only thing that I'm actually upset that we don't have in regards to ancient knowledge. Everything else we've moved past, I thought.
Yeah, so in general, don't destroy knowledge. I mean, even if you disagree with it, keep it around, because you never know what you might extract from it.
That's true. Yeah, the nerd in me cries every time I watch something about the libraries of Alexandria.
Right.
I'm just like, God, if we had that. If we had that, maybe we would know some things. But then,
Yes, all those people in classics departments would be overjoyed. They'd have something more to do. But
oh my goodness. So we have people now talking about laser cannons. I'm looking over at the chat and trying to see what's
laser cannon, what?
I don't know. Libraries of Baghdad, Libraries of Alexandria. If you're on Periscope, I can see you. PZ may not be able to see you, but I can see you.
No, I can't. So.
He can't. So if you have a question, let me know and I'll throw it at him. So we have people that have hopped on and said hello, and they have their own chat going on. Also, filter feeders such as clams can concentrate toxins in their bodies.
Yep.
Excavations of an ancient, now filled in port, showed high concentrations of crap, literally, since people dump their waste.
Yeah. Yeah. But the first people who went out and pulled up an oyster and actually thought it was something they should eat, they were weird.
What
Oysters
who ate eggs from chickens?
Right. But the thing is, they weren't gastronomes who were out trying for exotic foods. They were just people who were really hungry.
Yeah.
So a lot of these foods, I bet you people on the seacoast ate oysters and clams because, hey, there's lots of oysters and clams here, and it's protein, and it fills your belly, and then you learn, it's not so bad.
I like oysters, and I
Sure.
used to not. I used to get a little squeamish, going, "Oh, it kind of looks like a snail." I don't know that I could eat escargot because I know that leaves a snot trail behind it, and I have a hard time with that. But imagine oysters aren't that far of a stretch. But for whatever reason in my mind, I have a hard time with snails and slugs because snot trails.
Oh. Yeah, but all mollusks are secreting those same molecules at systematic density. Yeah. Yeah.
I know that. It's like my science brain is like, yeah, I know it's the same, but for whatever reason, as a kid, having to combat slugs and snails on my back porch with salt, and I'm so it's like this weird, this weirdness is going on in my mind from childhood, going, "Oh, you don't want to eat that? You remember that time we had to coat them in salt and stuff, and they shriveled up? That's what you're eating."
Yeah. I've had snails, and they weren't bad. I actually kind of liked them. But I'm just thinking back, when I was growing up near Seattle, you would find slugs everywhere, and big slugs crawling all over your yard. And I'm just thinking, I wonder if they would be a reasonable food source. Now I'm wondering if anybody has. I'll put this question out to anybody out there. Have you eaten any slugs? Because they're the same thing as snails, right?
Yeah, pretty much, just no shell, right?
Yeah. So they're like like boneless meat, right? So we have shellless meat here, and I just wonder if anybody has tried them. Because, man, we could have dined like kings every night when I was a kid. Just go out in the backyard, get a couple of snails.
You had snails. I wonder about the slugs, though.
Yeah, I wonder about the slugs, too. And somebody mentioned sea slugs. Sea slugs are completely different. That's a whole different phylum. And, I've had those, too. Those are pretty good.
I've not had slugs, snails, or sea slugs. I've not eaten that. I'm really picky and squeamish about my food to a degree. I've had sushi, but I won't eat octopus. I just can't do it. Not like when they like they do in Japan where they cut it off and the wiggling and stuff. I'm just like, this feels like a horror movie.
Yeah. Okay, I see somebody's mentioning grasshoppers. I've had grasshoppers. Those are good.
Have you eaten the chocolate-covered things like that? The grasshoppers and the ants and the spiders? They do have spiders now.
Oh, I haven't had the spiders, but I've had the chocolate-covered ants. I've had these salted fried grasshoppers, and they were pretty good. They were kind of chewy, and they reminded me of beer nuts more than anything else. Um, West Coast banana slugs are bitter. So you've eaten a West Coast banana slug. Now I'm curious because, yeah, there's.
Alligator, octopus, and pig. I've
Yeah.
not had alligator. I've not had octopus, but yeah, I eat me some pig.
I've had alligator and octopus. I've, you know, there was a tradition in many of the labs I was in where you were supposed to eat your experimental animal. So I've had zebrafish. You know, sort of like sardines on pizza.
Yes.
I've had grasshopper. I worked on grasshopper for a while. Haven't had fruit flies.
Yes. Oh, somebody said Science of 2017. See, Restream doesn't let me. Okay, I did not update all of my titles across the board, but I'll change the title on YouTube to the Science of PZ Myers. I can't change the title on Periscope, but I will change it on there. But I'll put a note on Periscope with that. So, but they'll see the placard card. I have a card that has your name on it. And you can't see it right now because you're on Skype. But it has your name there and your Twitter and everything. So when you go back and look, it'll be like this picture here of us talking. And it says PZ Myers on it. And people are like, this isn't 2017. I told you.
It's 2018.
It's 2018 now. Yeah. And that's not your name either.
Oh, my favorite weird food is palm grub. I've had witchetty grubs. Has anybody else had those? Those are amazingly sweet and tasty. And they're huge. They're great big grubs from, I think it was New Zealand and maybe it was Australia. And
you are a brave eater.
Maybe, like I said earlier, I'm just hungry.
You're just hungry. Like, what are all the ways that I could eat grubs? Are you going to do like Bubba Gump shrimp? You know, Bubba Gump grubs? Saute them, fry them, put them in a pie. I've never had grubs. Never, ever. I don't know.
Well, you know, if we were talking earlier about how we ought to be eating less meat, you know, you could substitute insect protein for a lot of these things, and it would be better for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, there's no short supply of insects. I wonder how many grasshoppers or ants it would take to make a burger.
Oh, that would be a lot. Yeah.
Have you seen the burgers that are made from stem cells? That was a thing that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was the most. What are your thoughts on stem cell grown burgers?
I think it's an interesting idea. I mean, I don't know if it's more efficient than growing them in a cow. That's the trick. Is there's an ethical dimension to it, in that you're now getting your protein from an organism that was never a conscious thinking organism, right? It was always cells assembled. But the other thing we're concerned about is, you know, cows are way up there on the food pyramid, the tree, and so they're kind of inefficient. And is it any more efficient to grow your muscle cells in a tissue?
Yeah, I think the technology will have to be a bit more tweaked to make it a bit more accessible. That's pretty interesting to be able. I mean, then we're reaching Star Trek territory to where you have maybe food replicators or actually stem cell 3D printers where you're growing your food. Yeah, I'm going to just make us a burger patty. Here you go.
Replicators aren't very realistic, but you know, if you had something like maybe if these vat-grown burgers were a way to turn high fructose corn syrup into more complex nutritional elements, that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Hey, were those lab-grown meats safe? As far as I know, it was safe, and it tasted similarly to a burger. There were some variances in texture, I think, but you would expect that when you're growing muscle tissue in a dish.
Oh, morally fine cannibalism. There's an interesting idea. What if our cells grown in tissue culture were derived from humans?
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, what are the ethical issues there? Is that cannibalism? I mean, strictly speaking, it is, but you haven't eaten a human being. You've eaten cells derived from a human being.
Yes. I mean, that's like chewing on your nails, isn't it? So,
yeah.
You know, like chewing on your nails or accidentally swallowing skin off your lips. So.
Oh, it's more. You're constantly sloughing off esophageal cells, that are going down in the stomach and being digested. So we're all sitting here eating ourselves to a small degree.
So in that regard, we're all kind of cannibals already, right?
Yes.
We're self-cannibals and possibly ingesting cells from other people too in, the atmosphere. Like
right.
inside your house, if you have family members, you've probably swallowed their skin cells too.
Yeah, you're breathing them in, so sure.
Yeah, so it's just... Yeah, that would be interesting.
You kiss someone and you're exchanging epithelial cells and you're swallowing them, so I'm sorry, we eat the people we love all the time.
We do. And honestly, there are cultures that do engage in cannibalism. There are certain sects in India where they eat part of the dead, But the issues associated a lot with cannibalism is the fact that you can get diseases from eating other people, and it can cause all kinds of problems. So that's always been a no-no in general. I mean, and this is why we have to be careful with with pig that we eat, because we're genetically similar to them. We can get diseases from them and that sort of thing, so on and so forth. So along those lines, you're more likely to get more in diseases from the people that you eat. So doing the stem cell thing would eliminate...
You bypass all that. Yeah, you do. You're now parasite-free, so it's safe.
It's safe. Parasite, virus, and bacterial-free human meat. Just for you. Directly to your door.
Yeah, I'm wondering what PETA's position would be on this whole business. Since we're not eating animals, we're just eating people. That's got to be okay.
Oh boy, this is a fun conversation. Lab-grown people meat.
Yeah.
There's probably, we should contact, who is it? Richard Branson from Virgin. Hey, you want to do lab-grown people meat and see what happens? He seems like he'd be on board with that. He's kind of wild like that. He was like, lab-grown people meat, you bypass all the issues associated with cannibalism.
Yeah.
No ethical concerns whatsoever. It's kind of, you eat yourself every day.
I bet you people are delicious. They're supposed to taste like pork, so just think, barbecue joints.
Barbecue joints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just barbecue nachos. That's a really good thing. And we have stuff out here called barbecue spuds. So this podcast is like working on a car. Everything can sound wrong. It's great. But yeah, I'm down with trying stem cell people meat and do it.
Sure.
Why not? Let me, in the film, Eat the Rich. Oh my God. We could encourage rich people to donate their stem cells. They might.
Yeah, but that kind of defeats the purpose of the whole Eat the Rich meme. It's, because the rich people would still be there.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, oh goodness. So we should let's talk about the vastly ignorant country that we live in regards to science, since you actively try to do a little bit of outreach with that. And I know that's what my whole project is with this, is trying to communicate science in a way to where it's like not heavily threatening and accessible and easy, and say, science is cool. It's all right. If you don't understand it, that's okay. I don't understand everything.
Yeah.
So that's why I talk to other people. So have you looked at the National Science Foundation study? I need to send you that link.
I've looked at many NSF studies.
Oh,
Which one is this?
I'm sorry. I should clarify. This is from 2012, a study they did on overall perception of science as well as an understanding of science concepts. And they not only did the U.S., but they looked at other countries as well outside of the U.S. And it's like a comparative study on what people, and the overall general consensus is that science is helpful, and science does provide, things for people to better their lives. They should have more money, but then, science should have more money to do things. But then they think that evolution isn't real. There's only 30% of the population actually in the U.S. accept evolution. 25%, approximately 25% of the population think that the sun revolves around the Earth. That's kind of big.
Yeah.
I think around 60% think that, I think it's 60%, I don't know solidly on that statistic. It's a majority think that you can boil radiation out of milk. But stuff like this,
I think I did read that one. The one that was really shocked that people were made out of cells.
But it's, what do we do with that when, and I've tried to tell people this is a real thing. I've done local talks as well as try to generate small little teeny tiny videos. 1 in 4 people think the sun revolves around the Earth. Don't be the 1 in 4. Please check out my channel. Do better than this. Don't be that person.
Yeah.
So how do you think we should go about trying to, what are your, and there could be several answers to this question. What are ways,
there are.
Yeah. What are ways that we could go about, just as, humble citizens of ourselves, trying to generate, how do we work towards fixing this? And I understand they're trying to do better with the kids, but this is coming from adults now, and they're the ones that are making decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, so I run this thing called Cafe Scientifique out of Morris, and we have these, the whole purpose of this is, here we are, we're at this little insular university, we need to disseminate the cool things we talk about to the general public. And so we get off of campus, we go to a local coffee shop, we have these hour-long talks about, it's kind of like TED Talks, only we try to be even more informal. And while doing that, of course, we're tracking our attendance and who's coming, and it's been a real struggle to get the community to even care about coming out to listen to talks about science. We've learned, well, at least I've learned, that there are 2 approaches that work. And one is, you can talk about something controversial, right? Yeah. Controversy gets them irritated and interested, and you get people, we had talks about, for instance, GMO foods that brought in people because they wanted to argue with us, and some wanted to argue with us, and so we got good attendance there. The other way, though, is to try and talk about stuff that they are personally vested in. Mm-hmm. The number one talk that got the best attendance was a talk by a river ecologist who talked about fishing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when we brought in somebody who would talk about the future of fishing in our region, that talked about, the kinds of fish that we have in our streams and lakes, who could actually directly address the things that a lot of people were interested in, it got a fair amount of attention, and people felt like coming and listening to it. So that's one angle, is can you connect to the public on a matter that is of personal interest to them?
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I've talked at length with others involved in climate science and stuff like that. You know, do you go the doom and gloom route, or do you go the practical? This is the practicality behind the situation. And so I agree. You have to make it interesting. You have to make it interesting in order to hit, you know, the individuals you're trying to get through, and then you can squeeze in a little bit of science here and there that, you know, it wouldn't be general knowledge. But yeah, I agree with that. I try to do that in my outreach and interactions with individuals, just to say, okay, look, who wants to hear about this? Or I know you've heard about this going on. Here's some science associated with it. So yeah, that's cool that it's worked that way for you as well.
Yeah, but then it does leave some things kind of dangling, because there's some topics that are kind of abstract, like evolution.
Yes.
How do I get somebody excited about talking? You know, usually you have to go the controversy angle,
yes.
Or you know, sometimes talk about some exotic animal and how it relates to everything else. That sort of works. I see somebody in the comments mention comedy. Yeah. Comedy is that's a good general approach, but not everybody can pull it off. I mean, I'm not a comedian. It doesn't work for me. But like a friend of mine, Rebecca Watson, that's her shtick. Is she gets out there and she makes these humorous criticisms of science and makes a humorous approach to skepticism, and I think that's also a viable approach to take. That only works for some people.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes I'm funny, but I'm not always funny. Sometimes I think I'm hilarious, and I'm like giggle snort, and I'm like, that's like the best joke, but like maybe 4 people got it, because like so incredibly sciencey. I'm just like, but that's funny too, because if you tell an inherently nerdy joke that maybe only 4 people would get, it gives you an opportunity to explain the joke. This is why it's funny, and then people go, oh wow, okay, that is funny. And you're like, oh, I know. You know, and some people are like, you shouldn't have to explain a joke for it to be funny. But I'm like, but it's a learning moment, you know. Not every, especially in organic chemistry, it'll say, oh my God, I'm dying, D-I-E-N-E, and it looks like a picture of a stick man, but it's a double bond, and he's laying down. He's like, I'm dying, and that, to me, I'm just like. And the other one is like, you know, a triple bond, and it's a stick man looking over, get up. I'm, you know, or it's like, I'm trying to get up, you know, because T-R-I-E-N-E. You know.
Yes, but remember, we're talking about how can you reach the general public who doesn't know anything about chemistry and is completely lost by this joke. That's an in-joke. That's great for, you know, at a scientific conference. But, yeah, how do you talk to somebody who is a plumber or a refrigerator repairman or a farmer?
To me, you know, if I wanted to talk about chemistry, I could go water quality with plumbing, you know.
Yeah.
You could do water quality with that, you know. And electrician, you could hop over and get into the electrochemistry aspect of things. There are ways to kind of go around. Oh, Steven mentioned Mel explaining evolution with Star Wars.
Yeah.
I did. So, I explained CRISPR with Star Wars characters one day. On the Steve's talk. So I was like, okay, so we have Rey here. She's the CAS9. And then we got Chewie here. And he's, you know, one of the other proteins that goes and finds the part of the code that it attaches to, and CAS9 comes along, you know, so
yeah,
I have done that. I have used Star Wars characters to
right. No, but I mean that's also, you know, like comedy. It's like everybody understands. Go through pop culture, tie your stuff into pop culture, and maybe you can get a few more people to listen to you.
It is an effective thing. So I had one of my videos I did the science of sci-fi. And I pulled out, here's aspects of sci-fi that could happen, or, you know, why we can't have lightsabers, you know, what are the issues associated, that the power source alone you'd have to have carrying on your back everywhere, and you'd be like dragging it on the ground, and then you need a giant plug, you know, so you'd have to have this long cord, you know, the whole, like, delicate aspect of the lightsabers just thrown out the window because of all the, and then the cooler, you know, you'd have to have
Right.
a coolant supply just to deal with the power pack of that amount, you know, and
then you start talking about energy densities required for your flying jetpack and your lightsaber, and then you're going to be reduced to, oh, well, we're going to have to use a little math to explain this, and then your audience is gone.
yeah, you know, so I try to avoid math at all costs. By chaos, organized chaos, she said, I'm going to go work on Bill's posters. Okay, thank you for the artwork. But yes, you know, I try to avoid the math until the very end because math fear is like a real thing.
Yeah. But now there's something we could argue about, though. Is that the best approach, or should we be exposing people to more math?
I usually throw in the math at the end.
Yeah.
I do eventually get to it, but I don't. That's not my starting thing.
Okay.
When I know when I used to tutor high school chemistry students, trying to get them to understand dimensional analysis when you're trying to go through moles, grams,
Right.
milligrams, liters, you know, forget volume, you know, just converting, you know, moles to you know, atomic mass units and stuff like that. Those words, the words are frightening to people.
Yeah.
So I would try to go through and use pictures instead. This is what a mole is. Now we're going to convert it to ducks. You know, and so
Right.
this is how we set it up. We cancel out the ducks here and here, and then we end up with octopi, you know, so whatever, using pictures, you know, and you teach the concept first. Then you go to, now we're going to, instead of pictures, we're going to have numbers here. This is where we get
Right.
the numbers, and just do it one at a time. You know? And
Yeah, but that's
filter
kind of
them.
the struggle we're having right now. I mean, I've been to a couple of educational conferences where we've talked about this stuff, and we're working on it here at my university. It's an open question.
Yeah.
Should you introduce the general concept and then hit them with the math, or should you give them the math background and then hit them with the ideas, the concepts, so that they have the tools to manipulate them? And I don't know the exact answer right now. So another example is in our introductory biology course right now, we're actually trying an experiment where half the faculty in their sections are teaching genetics first and then teaching evolution. Because if you know
That
the genetics, that works.
That works.
But
yeah.
I've always been a proponent of teach the evolution first, because historically that's the way it was done.
Yes.
And then you teach the genetics. And I'm not sure which way is the best way.
Having been a student, because I got my first bachelor's in 2009, and I had to take genetics, and then I also took human genetics at the same time as I was taking evolution. For me, evolution made a lot more sense because I had genetics. And I grew up in the very sheltered Bible Belt. I had no idea what evolution was. I didn't really get it in high school. I had no idea what the actual stuff was. And I was told it's evil and it's wrong and it's all this stuff. And, you know, by other church leaders and people within the community, that we just weren't taught what evolution was effectively. Because most of the people that were teaching us didn't believe in it. And in addition to that, they didn't understand it. And so I couldn't get anybody to give me a straight answer. I could never do that. And so when I got to college and I finally took evolution and had it explained to me after I had biology 1, biology 2, genetics, I had organic chemistry, I had you know, biochemistry, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay. And then I took evolution, I'm like, wow, this makes so much sense. Do you know how fantastic this is? It was just like I had this epiphany, and the clouds rolled back, and this light shined on me, and it was like, ah! I'm like, everything makes sense now. This is fantastic. It was like the most wonderful feeling that I finally knew what evolution was, because nobody could tell me. And I was just like, all growing up, my whole life, was the origin of people, where we come from. Oh, here's the Bible. And I'm like, okay, but isn't there like science behind this or something? And nobody knew anything. Nobody knew. They just like swept the question under the rug. Well, we'll answer that next week. They never did. So it's a completely different thing. So for me, having been on the receiving end of that knowledge, genetics was very helpful to help me understand evolution. But my life story is not the same as other people's life story. But I think it's also to do with the region.
Yeah.
So regionally, it's an uphill battle out here, you know, and we're dealing with an issue out in our area because they're pushing so hard for kids to be college ready. Leaving high school, they're not, because they expect everybody to be college ready. And so they have to teach to the lowest denominator, and trying to make that kid pass chemistry and biology and that a lot of kids get into college and they're not grasping concepts, and they're just not prepared at all. And so one thing at the local university out here is they're doing flipped courses. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. They actually got published a couple times on this, to where students are given an immense amount of work, including videos, and when they come to class, all they do is work on problems with the professor.
Flipped class. Yeah. No, we've experimented with that too.
What is your experience with that? I mean, since we're on the whole science education and all, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I did take some online courses, and it's similar to that, but I didn't even have a classroom. I just taught. I was self-taught on some of that. But what do you feel about those flipped courses?
I think it's an interesting approach, and I know some of my colleagues have been doing it pretty extensively, and they seem to be happy with it. That they seem to like the idea that it turns the classroom into a much more interactive experience, where the students are actually interacting with the work and talking about how you do this stuff. I've never done it, but I tend to take a kind of intermediate position, where, for instance, in my evolution class, it's going to be a combination of, here on this day I'm going to come in, I'm going to explain things to you, we're going to go over this concept, and then the next lecture day what I'm going to do is give them a bunch of problems. We're going to work through those in class. So it's the same principle, right? Is they've got a sort of didactic component that they get one time, and in a fully flipped class, the didactic component becomes the homework.
Right.
But this is make the didactic component part of the lecture experience, and then you take the problem solving, conceptual side of it, and you put that in a different class. And so I'm happier with kind of a hybrid approach than going to a fully flipped classroom.
I find it can be hit or miss, especially with students who may need a bit more. I need somebody to explain this to me more than just a slide video series. I didn't have the flip course when I took organic, but I did have a really good teacher, which is a bit different. But there are some people, when I was at the university and I was working as a grad student, I was also in their learning center trying to tutor people. They had the flip class, and it was such a foreign concept to them.
Yeah.
They didn't actually know how to sit there and go through a textbook and read stuff, because that's not what they're doing in high school.
Right.
So it's extremely foreign. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to just sit here. And the videos are helpful, but then they're like, I have questions though. Who do I ask? And then you can shoot an email, but that may not be as comprehensive as what you need. So, and then you go to class, you're mostly doing problems, and you're trying to ask questions, but if you don't have a particularly approachable professor, it's going to be a bit more difficult to ask those questions too. And then remembering the questions that you had, if you didn't write them down, you didn't have the pre-thought of, I better write down all my questions. you know, that's something that is a skill you had to kind of teach too. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and here at my university, they've been doing this extensively in the introductory chemistry courses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there I can sort of see the logic behind it in that what we really want students, you know, looking at it as a biologist, of course, you know,
yes.
Chemistry is just a pathway to get to biology. But from my perspective, what I really want is for students to get comfortable with, you know, the basics of those things like unit conversions you talked about, and and stoichiometry and all that kind of stuff. And so what I really think is important is that drill and practice aspect of it, that come in and do it in the classroom where we can watch you and we can talk about how you do it and we can see that you actually do it. I know from my experience that often what happens is students will come to a pure lecture course and they'll sit there and they'll listen to you and they'll say, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's really clear. I don't think I need to do the homework now.
Oh, no.
and they're wrong. They got to go through those logical steps themselves in homework. And so
work. It's
right.
Work, and people don't understand. They have to work in order to learn often. Yeah.
Yeah, and so things like in general chemistry, from my perspective again, is that I think the most demanding part is to make sure that the students actually sit down and do those problems over and over again.
Yes. And
by putting that into the supervised classroom, you're making sure that critical component gets done.
And I find, you know, I was an adult when I went back to school and finished. I went back and got my first degree as an adult. My circumstances got in my way, but if I think sometimes when you transition to, can you still hear me? My speakers went dead on my headphones. Let me try to plug these up. I think we've gone so long on this that now I'm not certain that they can hear you say things. So let me plug up my headphones. I can't hear you. Hang on 1 second. Oh, goodness. Let me see if this will work. Hopefully it will, because now we have a brand new technical difficulty. My headphones died. That sounds like a country music song, doesn't it? My headphones died. Something new for, it seems like, hold on, let me see. Double checking really quickly. We have sound issues again. No, that's still there. Let me go to the call and correct this. Audio settings. Only in my world does this happen. Hold on. You sent me a message on Skype. I'm hearing you rock solid. So weird. Yeah, I think for whatever reason the call quality has gone down. Say, it's still registering my headphones. So I don't know why I can't hear you now. This is so weird. Can you guys hear him on your end? People on the computer, can you guys hear him on your end? Because I can't hear him on mine anymore. I don't know if they can hear me or not. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can register your sound. I can't register your sound on here. Okay. Maybe science is saying they've heard more than enough of me. That is so weird. Oh, wow. Okay. This is weird. Okay. okay, so Skype has updated and done all kinds of new weird things. I heard his message being sent to me, but I can't hear his sound now. And it just was random because Skype popped up and said, Skype popped up and said, you don't have speakers. So I'm not hearing him, but I'm hearing the Skype signal. So, well, it's been almost 2 hours anyway, and I'm pretty certain, thanks, Microsoft. Blame ISP is what I do, yes. So, but it's been 2 hours, and I got your chat up here on the side, and I don't know if they can see that or not, but the chat is there, so they're able to see your words. But maybe we'll have to do this another time. Yeah, it's probably a good time to wrap up because, you know, it's noon now, PZ. I'm going to, like, keep you from eating lunch, eating your bugs. I don't know what bugs you have on the menu today. It has it. He's not muted. He's not muted at all. You know, it's there, but, you know, Skype recently had an update. Yes, I think, PZ, you are going to be on Jackson Wheat's Hangout, right? So maybe that'll allow some time. Yes, and so it'll sort out. It'll be Hangout as opposed to Skype, so that should work. PZ, I would love to have you on with and talk again if you're willing. If you're willing to come back sometime, sure. Yay! I heart this dude. We've had like exceptional technical difficulties with just him. He uses the Force. You know, he's got to use the Force or something. So, he Force touched me through Skype. That's a thing now. So we will be on Jackson's channel to check out, and, you know, hopefully all of any technical issues won't be there because it'll be Hangout as opposed to Skype. But this has been The Science of PZ Myers. You need to go to his Twitter. His blog is listed there. It's actually hard to type out, but you can click on the link, twitter.com/PZMYERS, and see all the cool work that he does. He's an awesome guy, and I've had a lot of fun talking to him, like 3 times now. 3 whole times I got to talk to him. It's fun. So thanks so much for coming on here. And you guys have an awesome, awesome day. Bye.